pleasure to be here, and we want to thank God for His providence and mercies upon us to bring us into a new year, this being the first press conference, Government of Anguilla for 2023. And it's good to see you all out today. I want to thank the ministers, the Parliamentary Secretary, Ministerial Assistant, Public Relations Officer, Dites, and then also want to welcome Felicia Ennis from Radio Anguilla, Lloyd Gums from Lloyd's Live. He thought I'd call him Mr. Burgrass, but I refrained from doing that publicly. Mr. Brooks from Radio Anguilla also. We have Don Hodge and Brenda Carty from the Daily Herald, Dr. Joyce from the Anguillian, and my main man, Mr. CP, Carl Pickering from KCN Channel 4. It's good to be here today, and certainly I know that it's been a little while. I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas festive season and that the new year has gotten off to a great start, and that all of us have made resolutions that we're going to keep this time. I'll ask the minister to lead us in a word of prayer. Thank you, Minister Hodge.
Thank you, Premier. If you may take a moment just to be reflective as we go through January and the rest of this year. We want to give thanks, Almighty God, for His blessings and mercies upon us as a people, for having spared us from the hurricane season of last year, and we are hoping that this year will also be a mild one. We especially ask for His blessings and guidance to those in our society who are suffering the loss of loved ones at this time, and also to encourage us as a people to reach out and offer those helping hands, those hands of encouragement. We ask, Lord, for your blessings upon this press conference this afternoon, the first for 2023, that it may go well and in order. We bring these before your throne this afternoon. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Yes, as you mentioned, Minister, we have lost several Anguillians in the past year, and even this year we've started out with the loss of Mr. Collins Dundon Hodge, uncle of Member of Parliament Mr. Kyle Hodge, and we certainly want to pray that God brings comfort to the family, and certainly all Anguillians who are mourning the loss of loved ones, we wish them strength and comfort. And those who are sick, we ask that God be merciful and provide healing. We'll go right into, I'd like to start with the Minister for Infrastructure and Tourism, because I know he has a lot to say, so we'll start with you, Minister. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Premier. And even though I was challenged in the wicket, it's okay to be the opening batsman. Just quickly to report that, as you know, the government of Anguilla has been challenged for a number of years in terms of its vehicular fleet. As we all know, the former administration spent millions in car rentals, and we have decided that that is not the way we ought to go. To that end, so far we have purchased recently 11 vehicles, some for the Royal Anguilla Police Force and other departments, to the tune of $170,000 from Motor World in St. Martin. We still expect to import some more vehicles that is needed by the sports department in terms of maintenance, the Department of Probation for the movement of their passengers that are housed in Zenada Haven and the like, and some other departments that are in desperate need of vehicles. We just want to move away from and the renting of vehicles, because it makes no good sense to be spending millions of dollars in car rentals, and at the end of the day, you don't own them. And as we know, government have done a pretty decent job at maintaining vehicles. We remember back in 2009 when the former administration stood in front of some school buses that were purportedly bought by the core group, Barnesby Development, formerly known as Viceroy, only to learn that those were actually paid for by the taxpayers of Anguilla. Be that as it may, they still remain operational, so we still have a very good shelf life out of the vehicles that we purchase. As some of us may know, during the festive period, we had some challenges with the delivery of water from the Water Corporation. And a lot of persons had the belief that the water was actually turned off, but it was not turned off. We are saddled with a tremendous amount of leakage. The last analysis that we had, there was over 80% of the water that is produced is leaking into the ground. But at the same time, because of the need by a large member of our community for water from the Water Corporation of Anguilla, we just can't turn the water off. To that end, we have, in the initial stages, decided that we need to replace the network, and we have budgeted funds in the 2023 budget to start the process of replacing the network and rebuilding the network. As you know, from previous press conferences, you know that we are also looking at reintegrating the Water Corporation back as a government department under the Ministry of Infrastructure, because when we came to office in 2020, the Water Corporation had owed Anguilla in excess of $11 million. And they were saddled with a number of accounts payables that is not yet still being fixed. So given the fact that the government of Anguilla has had to jump in on several occasions to rescue the Water Corporation, we thought that it would be best that we look at reintegrating it back into as a government department. Moving on to tourism, as you know, we continue to market the destination heavily. The Anguilla Tourist Board is tasked with the responsibility of marketing the destination. To that end, in conjunction with the Ministry of Finance, we are also looking to expand the marketing remit of the Anguilla Tourist Board to include the marketing of the financial services industry, because for too long that industry has been left to wander by itself, and we want to really develop the financial services industry, and we thought that the best way to do so is to really give it an injection in terms of marketing and promotion, and some cross-fertilization, training between financial services and Anguilla Tourist Board, so that we can utilize all the resources at our hand to be able to market the industry in a more meaningful way than it was being done in the past. Some time ago, the former Premier, Mr. Banks, had said to the now leader of the opposition that she is now the Minister of Financial Services. And that was a joke at the time, because the Premier at the time and the government at the time said they did not lose any sleep over financial services, and it was something that they were not keen about. This administration is keen to ensure that we build all of the pillars to create more economic opportunities for the people of Anguilla and Anguilla as a whole. Just quickly on the festive period. The festive period was a very successful period by most metrics. For example, with all the major hotels on the island, for example, all of the hotels, with the exception to one, surpassed their 2019 numbers. So that is really good. We saw some of the hotels displaying their service charge figures, and we know last year some of the hotels had record levels of service charge, and those that had record levels of service charge last year have surpassed those records this year. So that should bode well for everybody, including the employees who receive those service charge checks. Now, I've heard persons ask the question, why is it that Four Seasons, the Frangipani, their service charge is so much more than, let's say, the Aurora, for example? Some of the things that we have to factor in with service charge as relates to service charge legislation is that 95% of the service charge is distributed amongst the staff, but there are certain factors that determine what the service charge figure will be. That includes room rate, occupancy, and the level of staffing. So if you have room rates that are lower, and you have occupancies that are lower, and you have a staff complement that is higher, obviously there'll be less funds to be distributed amongst the staff. And I hope that that can be understood by persons who have been complaining as to relates to why this hotel has this level of service charge while that hotel have that level of service charge. It all has to do with those factors, and hopefully that can be understood. The airport, we spent the entire morning this morning at the Ministry of Infrastructure going over airport development. As you know, this administration has as one of its key priorities to develop this economy, to build resilience within the economy, is infrastructure development. And critical among that is the airport. And anybody driving around in Anguilla in the valley right now, they can see our long run, they can see that the enabling works have already been commenced. You'll see the temporary parking lot, the excavation is being done. As a matter of fact, the excavation for the temporary parking lot is almost completed. The excavation for the additional apron east of the existing cargo building has already started, and also the excavation for the parallel taxiway on the southern side of the existing landing strip has already been started. So we're well on our way to ensure that the enabling works come in on time, and we hope to have all of that work completed on or before March 31st of 2023. And you can hold me to that. Once those works are completed, we'll be looking to the development of a new cargo building on the southern side of the existing airstrip, and also a new terminal building with new parking lot and all of the other amenities that comes around that. So these are the works that we are working on right now. While we're doing that, we are working on the transition from the temporary facility in Blowing Point into the new Blowing Point Ferry Terminal. On Friday of this week, we'll be having an opening ceremony, even though it will not be open on Friday. I would have liked it to be open on Saturday, but the Anguilla A&C Ports Authority wanted a little bit more time just to transition all of the equipment over to the new building, so we expect the building to be open and operational for passengers on the 30th of this month. And you can hold me to that. As it relates to the seaport, we all know that the seaport, the dock facility in Sanagrong has already been completed. There's a lot of work still need to be done, and not on the dock facility itself, but on the land side. And it was a huge mistake, an error in judgment, a bad decision, if you will, to build the facility in Sanagrong. But that said, we have to make it work. And we are trying to build a case for the landside port facilities to ensure that that is fully operational in the way it ought to be. And one last thing, and that is related to vehicle and road traffic. As you know, the Vehicle and Road Traffic Act comes under the Ministry of Infrastructure. I have met with the existing Commissioner of Police on more than one occasion to discuss vehicle and road traffic. And I have given up. So I've thrown up the white flag because there's nothing more I can say. And I don't have any jurisdiction. And I can't terminate, and I can't fire, and I can't even reprimand. So, but I just want to place on record that I have written, I have spoken, I have admonished, I have begged, I have pleaded, I have prodded, and still there is very little enforcement as it relates to Vehicle and Road Traffic Act and the Litter Abatement Act. And it is something that we need to be cognizant of, because when persons are out there blaming the government, I take offense to that, because it's not the government. It may be a government entity, but it's not the political directorate that have jurisdiction over these authorities that is supposed to enforce the legislation, the regulations that are on the books. So that said, that's my spiel for today.
Good afternoon. There's a
Good
beautiful
afternoon, and
cruise.
Happy New Year, Brenda.
Sorry?
Happy New Year.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
good to see you.
There's a beautiful cruise ship in Sandy Ground today.
Yes.
I have two questions about it. First of all, is it the first visit of this seaborne ovation? And is it going to be a regular visit? My second question is, at one time we had a regulation about the number of passengers on cruise ships visiting Anguilla. Do we still have that regulation, and what is it?
Last question first. We don't have a regulation as it relates to how many cruise ship passengers can visit Anguilla. That's the last question first. The first question last. As you know, back in 2011, we commenced the berthing of the seaborne cruise line into Anguilla because it was the goal of the administration at the time, when I was parliamentary secretary responsible for tourism, to have small luxury cruise lines visit Anguilla. And this is what it is, and it will continue on a weekly basis. Sometimes you will see them twice a week, sometimes you'll see them on a Thursday, and then again on a Sunday. So it is something that you will see regularly.
So there's no regular schedule? I mean, yesterday we had a 4-master and a 5-master.
Yeah, there's no regular
But they
schedule,
don't-
but you will see them typically on the weekends or around Thursday to the weekends, into the
I
weekends.
see, okay. And any size cruise ship can now come in? Is that what
Well,
you're saying?
they will be small luxury cruise lines, 300, 350. That type of cruise lines, mostly affluent visitors coming to the Anguilla and enjoying all of the services and amenities that we have to offer.
Well, that's why I was asking the question, because this one it can hold 600 passengers.
Yeah, but again, it's a luxury cruise line, and this is what we are aiming towards.
My only concern is that can Sandy Ground cope with that number of
Well,
people?
Sandy Ground can hold with the Sandy Ground Beach Party. And if you can cope with the Sandy Ground Beach Party, then what is a small 600-person cruise line?
True.
And they can have the added amenity of some bug grass just to enhance the experience.
One other quick question. The departure lounge at the airport. Now, I know
Sorry?
I know you're working on development and what have you, but in the meantime, I've heard several visitors who've left saying they're there for 2 hours, they can't even get a bottle of water. There's nothing really that they can get. Is there anything we could do temporarily until things change?
Yeah, those are the challenges that we have during the festive. There was a lot of cluster in the air, and so the gateways getting out of Anguilla was very challenged. And this is something that we have to take into consideration even as we develop the aerodrome. We don't even own our airspace. That is how bad it is. 3,000 feet up, 10,000 feet away is controlled by St. Martin. So I guess they'll prioritize their flights rather than ours. But as I said, as we seek to develop our aerodrome, that is why it is important in the direction in which this administration is going into, to develop the aerodrome to ensure that we have a level of sovereignty, not only of our waterways, but also of our airways. So this is something that we're working on. But it goes back to your point about whether or not we can do something about it. Now, this is not the first time it has happened. It happened last year. It has happened years previous. Persons have been sitting in their private jets, for example, for up to 4 and 5 hours and sitting at the airport. Now, the thing is that we have to be able to prepare for that. So if I'm an agent, if I'm concierge, if I'm a hotelier, we know that these are some of the possibilities. So these are some of the things that we have to work on. But at the same time, working with the Anguilla Air and Seaports Authority, we're trying to mitigate it as much as possible post-security, where you'll have some drinks, some beverages, so that we can deal with that, because it becomes a security concern.
Happy New Year from the Daily Herald, Part 2. You covered about 10 different topics, and I have questions on all, but in the interest of time and sharing, I'm just going to ask about 2 issues. Water. The leakage, you say, is 80%, and you have started, or infrastructure is in the process starting in 2023 to replace. Could you talk a little bit more about the schedule, not only when you will start, but how long a process you expect this to be, and when we will be at 100% distribution? I know it won't be this year, but is there a timeline that you can talk to? Water. You weren't listening.
I don't want to and speak to 24/7 water, and I don't want to
24/7. I just want to know what the timeline is, what the plan is to start fixing it.
Well, the plan to start fixing it is immediate. The completion date, we don't know, because of a number of factors, mainly financial. It's going to take us tens of millions of dollars to replace the network. It's not the initial costing that I received on the second day on coming to office was 20 million US dollars, around 55 million EC. That cost have escalated since then. So sorry. So the last estimate that we were looking at was somewhere in the region of $70 million to fix the water issues, right? So I can't give any timeline as it relates to when it'll be completed to 100%. I even completed 50%. I can't give them the timelines because there are too many variables that we don't have any control over.
So,
Sorry? EC dollars. I speak in EC dollars.
so I think 5 million was budgeted
Yes,
for this
that's
year.
correct. That's correct.
And how is that going to be spent?
It's going to be spent on initially replacing the network. We don't have any problems with the production of water. We have two plants. We have the brackish plant that we acquired from TSG, and then we have the reverse osmosis plant down in desalination plant, sorry, down in Crocus Bay. So we don't have a problem in terms of the production of water, but we have two major issues. Water desalination is extremely energy intensive. So that is something that we're looking at how we can address that as well. But the major problem is the distribution network. That is a major problem. Then we also have a huge problem in terms of persons who want to get on government water. I want to call it government water for ease of reference. And they just don't have the ability to because Brenda don't want the pipes run under her land into Jones' house. And that is another challenge that we have as well.
The other issue, and you didn't mention it here, and I'm just going to throw it out, and it's just a question. And I'm asking you because it's an infrastructure thing. I was taking some friends around, showing them the island the other day, and we went past the newly refurbished courthouse next to the water department. And it looks fabulous from the outside, but I understand it's not open yet. So if you know, could you tell me what is stopping it from being open? I've asked around. That's not
Project.
infrastructure?
I'll pass that on. Yeah, we can. Yeah, Grace
Okay.
left one, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Happy. Happy New Year to you guys from Lloyd's Live. Mr. Hughes, you made reference earlier at the beginning that when you all got in office, water owed Anguilla 11 million. I know you all made some payments. What's the figure down to now, please?
I can't say with 100% surety what the figure is, but I think somewhere in the region of 13.40 million or thereabout. Not take into consideration interest and other charges.
You also made reference to the challenge is not the production of water, but the distribution. In reference to the distribution, we know that there's leakage all over the island, but which areas have more severe leakage? And we know that in the West, we have some severe issues with water. Will the West be given priority?
I hate to use the words east and west when it comes to Anguilla.
I take that back. Areas like Lower South Hill, West End. I'm referring to those areas.
The most severely hit as it relates to leakages is Blowing Point. Blowing Point has the most significant leaks on island. And most likely, the hope is that we'll start where the most leaks are, and then we move from there. But there are a lot of leaks on the eastern side of the island, but for some reason the water flow is better going towards the eastern side of the island. I don't know if it drains that way because it's all gravity fed, but there's a lot of leaks on the eastern side of the island, but Blowing Point is definitely the most severely hit.
Mr. Hughes, you spoke about the success of the festive season. What is the general outlook for the tourism season for the remainder of the year? I also know that government has been pushing for hotels to remain open throughout the year. Could you give us some feedback on that?
The general outlook is very good. It's very good, notwithstanding the whole noise around the possibility of a recession in the U.S. I'm no financial expert, but what I do know is that we're positioned to be able to mitigate that as much as possible. Be that as a way, the general outlook is extremely good, and there are some hotels that I dare not name at this point in time that have committed to remaining open throughout the rest of the year, and we continue to have discussions as it relates to that, because what we really want to ensure is that we have an economy that is robust throughout the year. You know, not a 10-month out of the year economy. And as you noticed from last season, 2022, you realize that even those hotels that closed, they closed for a much shorter period of time. And Aurora remained open. They'll remain open again this year. I can speak to that one because they remained open last year and they committed to remaining open in this year. And I must say that Aurora have expanded their food and beverage offerings, and it's top-notch. It's up to the standard in which Anguilla is known for as the culinary capital of the Caribbean. So we're very pleased to see what is happening on the culinary front, on the hospitality front, on the business front, and I think we are all trending in the right direction.
So now we have the Housewives of New York in Anguilla. I don't know if you can speak about that.
Well, as you know, one of the things that we sought to do when I was Parliamentary Secretary of Anguilla was, of tourism, was to create another pillar, which was film, the arts and film. And yes, it is a tremendous marketing tool for Anguilla as a destination, but it also increases our capacity. It gives young budding filmmakers the opportunity to learn from the best. And so, as you know, we did the Real Housewives of Atlanta some years ago, and that was tremendously successful. To this day, we are still receiving tourists who are coming to Anguilla for the first time because of the Real Housewives of Atlanta. Recently, we did the Destination Wedding that was featured on VH1, and now the Real Housewives of New York, which is just wrapped up its filming. And so we hope to see, you know, some great episodes, some great shots coming out of that. I just want to say something quickly about the Destination Wedding. Now the Destination Wedding, Pastor Keon Henderson and Shauna O'Neill, that was done here back in May of last year, there was a particular bit of that series that people were very critical of. And these are, when people visit Anguilla, Anguilla is not an all-inclusive destination. So people travel around the island. They travel around the island, so you have a true depiction of what the island is. So when people travel around the island, we've had instances, which is to my mind embarrassing, where we've had tourists who come to our island and you see them on the beaches with garbage bags picking up garbage. That should never be. We should never have our tourists coming to Anguilla and picking up garbage. This is not made up. This is fact. You can see it. If you can go even online, you'll see some of the articles that were written about it and so forth. So what I would say to us is that if we want Anguilla to be depicted the way it ought to be depicted, then we should all do our part to ensure that we have a type of destination that we can be proud of, regardless of who's filming, whether it's a big budget film or whether it's somebody just taking pictures around the island. Each one of us have our part to play.
Mr. Hughes, you also touch on the Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, and you talk about your frustration. But we know you've spoken a number of times about the seatbelt legislation. Anything about that coming on stream this year?
Yeah, definitely. I can say without a shadow of a doubt that will be done this year. One of the bits is already completed. The other bits need just some little minor bits and pieces before they are completed and taken on to Executive Council. And most likely we will have some public consultation with them as a batch before we move forward. A couple of them are just regulations and some of them is legislation.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for those questions. I'll go to the Minister for Social Development and Education, Then after, we'll ask the Paul Sec to comment on some of the areas that he's involved with, including with the ministers that he works with. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I have a couple updates. The first one being on package 2. As we know, I've gotten a number of questions related to the completion of the Albina Lake Arch Comprehensive School at its new facility. Essentially, the project is proceeding well, and it is currently anticipated to be completed by the summer. We have been engaging with the contractors who would have completed packages 1 and 3, and one of the contractors would have declined, but we've had one of the other contractors who was on site accept the completion of the package 2 project, and work will begin in February. So we are currently looking at the at some amendments based on some increase in costs for materials and labor. So we're currently reprioritizing some expenditure to meet the project completion date and to ensure immediate usability of the building at the end. Of course, this means that we're just working out some kinks. And while we remain optimistic that we will complete by summer, we are also mindful of some of the logistical issues that are happening globally, specifically in relation to some of our major suppliers. But nevertheless, our contractor has been working very closely with us, and they have given us all assurances that they understand how urgent and how necessary it is to complete this particular package. And we are optimistic for it to be finished and complete by summer 2023 for a move-in for September 2023. As we stated earlier last year and into this year, the government of Anguilla is putting its money where its mouth is, and we have increased our budgetary allotment specifically for the area of technological development across our schools, and that is one of the priority areas for 2023 as we continue to work with the Anguilla initiative on the rollout. Some people have been asking what's happening at the Albina Lake Arch Comprehensive School level, and what the update really is that as part of the new move to the Albina Lake Arch Comprehensive School new site, that ICT development has been built into our new schools. So our new schools will be equipped with the ICT development that you would see at our primary school level. Again, on our lunch program, which we launched last year, which was received very, very successfully, we would have rolled it out in the first phase to Adrian T. Hazel Primary School, Mars Vantaboo Primary School, Alvin Allison Richardson Primary School, and the extension of the program that existed at the Vivian Vantaboo Primary School. In phase B, which is what we're now going into, we're going to be extending the program to Valley Primary School and the Aurelia Kelly Primary School. This project is valued at just over $2,000 per student, and the total value for all our students across the primary school system is valued at approximately $3.2 million. Again, for our development in sports, this year we have finally been able to give the Department of Sports a much needed increase after decades of receiving the same level of support from government. We now have increased our allotment budgetarily to the Department of Sports, which will ensure that we're not only able to restructure the department in terms of the services being provided to the community and to our athletes, but also to ensure that we have funding available for new student development and new sports development projects, which you will see coming within the next quarter as we have students who are planning on traveling to represent Anguilla. As the minister stated in relation to vehicles, one of the lagging issues that we had at the Department of Sports was the lack of a flatbed truck. We were borrowing a truck from the Department of Education and from elsewhere because the truck that was given to the Department of Sports was broken down, and that meant that a number of facilities under the management of the Department of Sports obviously saw a high degree of deterioration. but we are now, of course, procuring a new truck for our Department of Sports, which will allow us to do more programs, as you would have seen behind the Coronation Avenue. We have a new playground that has been installed for our community, for community play and recreation. The intention is to increase the amount of playgrounds that we have across the island, and to ensure that our workers are able to get to those locations and execute that role, we would need the availability of a flatbed truck. Advertisements are also currently out for members to apply to the Drugs Advisory Council, and I encourage all suitable applicants to apply. This is a very important council, specifically for the government of Anguilla's aim to decriminalize marijuana. Again, I must state on record that the government of Anguilla is not pursuing the legalization of marijuana, it is pursuing the decriminalization of marijuana. And that is the purpose, part of the purpose for which this Drugs Advisory Council has been established. Additionally, the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School has launched its Malahana Rainbow Project in collaboration with Rebel Marine and Festival Del Mar. So students from every department within the school will be engaged in activities around the building of 2 Arawak canoes or boats that will be raced during Festival Del Mar. We have our Form 3 students who are in the tech area, WISE and PRU, who will be building those boats. Our 6th Form students in the art and design units will be decorating the boats in the Taino motifs. Our Form 3 students in humanities will be conducting research on marine trade and transportation and in Arawak communities, and we'll be publishing it in audiovisual and digital tools. Our English department students will be publishing reports which you can pick up in the Anguillian newspaper and other places online. And our business department will be conducting our financial record keeping on the project, with our music students composing music, and our home and food tech students will be designing attire for our racers and some food for sale at Festival Del Mar. So as you can see, this is a whole school project which is meant to increase the engagement of our students, specifically in technical vocational areas, and to ensure that learning takes place right across our school. And then just simply to touch on the new courthouse development, which Dawn would have brought up recently. So as you can see, the new courthouse development at Crocus Bay is completed externally. All the internal works have been completed thanks to the kind donorship of Richard. I'm hoping I'm not calling his name incorrectly. It's Richard. Okay, Michael Taylor. So my apologies. At the moment, the Department of Youth and Culture is currently in discussions and negotiations with our historical artifacts, and to discuss which historical artifacts will be housed at the museum. So negotiations are currently being undertaken with persons who have collections, for those collections to be displayed in that courthouse. Until we finalize those discussions, obviously, we can't display anything in the courthouse, so we would need our museums and our other persons who actually hold those historical artifacts to agree for government to put them on display. So those are the developments under the Ministry of Social Development and Education.
Ms. Kentish, you spoke about the increase in the budget for education as it relates to ICT, but I know persons have been critical of the ministry in terms of no monies allocated or budgeted for the temporary custodians who were brought on stream for the COVID period. We know that their last working day was on Friday, and persons, like I say, have been critical because COVID is still around, and they believe the custodians were really doing a good job as it relates to that particular area, because what you're hearing is that still there seems to be issues with the cleanliness of the bathrooms, especially at the high schools. Students are not really utilizing the bathrooms due to the scent and how they are kept. So I don't know, any feedback in that area?
So we would have had 9 custodians who would have been hired specifically as a result of COVID-19. And I have to say specifically as a result of COVID-19, because when we're looking at our financial record keeping, we cannot approve expenditure when the cause for the expenditure no longer persists. As you can see across all ministries and across Anguilla, a lot of the COVID expenditure specifically has ceased. Now, when we're looking at efforts in relation to how we go forward in relation to the size of the schools and the employment of additional custodians, we are assessing the best way to move forward in terms of reinstituting more custodians across the school. And another update will be provided once we have more substantially discussed and decided on the matter going forward. So of course, the specific grounds for the hiring of those custodians no longer persists, and we are not able to approve expenditure simply because we feel like it's best, or we personally feel like it's best. Our administration is very, very keen on ensuring that we follow proper governance procedures in order to ensure that the spending of money through the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Social Development is all approved and has oversight, and therefore we will not include or induce more expenditure than we have approval for. Once we get approval for additional spending, then we can move forward in relation to that. But we are not in the habit of incurring more costs if there's no approval specifically for that purpose. So now that that particular cause is no longer, we will be looking specifically in relation to the size of the schools and what can be done to maintain the schools in the long term.
So good afternoon. I have a question relating to the quote-unquote suppressive rates to play golf at Aurora. I understand that between 2006 and 2021, it would have costed $80 to $125, and now it costs over $200 to play a round of 18-hole golf. With that large increase, most Anguillians are unable to afford to play golf there. What is the government doing to get better rates for Anguillan golfers?
Well, we have been having discussions specifically as relation to the rates specifically at the golf course. And there have been changes being made specifically to those rates. What I do often reiterate is this is a very different circumstance to most other sporting exercises in that the golf course is at a private establishment, and there is not much control that government has in terms of dictating rates, specifically because it's persisted, this particular agreement has persisted for decades, essentially, and then it was changed when the new owners and managers came through for the Aurora Resort. At that point in time, and now where we are, we continue to have discussions in relation to those rates. Those discussions, of course, are not subject to a public forum specifically as this, but changes have been made. And we continue to have discussions in relation to the rate being afforded at the golf course.
You mentioned that it's private and government can't dictate the prices, but price control measures can be implemented to
price control doesn't. No, that's not where price control comes in. You can't. Sorry, no. Price control is for matters specifically in relation to essential services, so things that people must use. So you see price control measures going in for food, for costs of things that are very necessary for the furtherance of persons' lives. So this is essential services. A government entity can't really go in and say to, especially where you don't have an agreement that dictates that the government has the ability to do so, you can't price control simply by saying, I am government, you are private, but I want this. That's not really how it works specifically in that industry. Now, I say that to say that we have been having discussions, and that is the way that we'll have to move forward because we do not have ownership specifically of that property. And so that is the only way that we can move forward in relation to those discussions. We can't price control.
I'll fairness understand that those discussions haven't been yielding any much for the local golfers. they would have rate changes, and the rate changes ended up still being over $200 per round. So
Sorry?
the rate changes still.
Sir, in the interest of time, I think that the minister has answered that question. The discussions are still ongoing, and certainly it's up to individuals if they want to play that they can, have discussions with the entities at the golf club. I appreciate you, but please move on.
Another question with in relation to the Ronald Webster Park. There would have been some talk recently, well, last year, about it being transformed to an athletic stadium and whatnot, but there's nothing being done, and we understand that it was gifted for cricket alone, right? So when do you plan on developing it as a cricket stadium?
So as I would have said, nearly since September of last year, the discussions in relation to the James Ronald Webster have ceased in relation to transferring it to athletics. That position was made very clear that we do not have an intention of developing it as a athletics field. However, we have been discussing with our director, and as soon as he comes back on stream, he has been messaging me from where he was getting treatment, with the intention of furthering plans in relation to the development of the cricket grounds, because if we are to develop it as a state-of-the-art cricket arena, there's a lot of monetary expenditure that needs to take place in order to bring it up to standard. One of the first things that we are looking at really relates to the Players Pavilion, and that is in order to allow us to look at regional teams coming into Anguilla. And we would have had some of those discussions already about next steps going forward. Of course, we can't do everything, so we do have to prioritize our capital expenditure, and right now our capital expenditure is prioritized towards the completion of our education plans. So at the moment, we are not moving forward those plans until we have access to the capital necessary to complete those project plans. And when we have that capital in hand, you will be the first to know.
Quick question about the lunch program. You said that it is costing about $3.2 million yearly. I know when it first started, it was either totally paid for or augmented by Aurora, and I think the government also kicked in funds. I may be incorrect on that point. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Going forward, will it continue to be funded the way it currently is funded? Half and half, or?
So it's continuing to be funded in a very similar manner in which it is funded now. We are continuing to have negotiations and to spread the negotiations past just one institution, and we're looking to onboard all of our institutions in this project because we believe that they all have a stake in the development of our young people and their well-being. And so while we are continue to have this funding agreement with our partners at Aurora, we are of course also looking to include all of our funding partners in this process going forward. Yes, that's correct.
A quick question. You had said $2,000 per student. Now, I might have missed it. Was that per month, per term, per year?
So if you average out $10 a day, 5 days a week, to 4 weeks, and then 39 weeks, which is the average time for a school year, that would bring you to just about $2,000. Now, this $10.
My question may transition us to health.
Okay.
So here we go. I know you mentioned that in light of the COVID restrictions being lifted, funding for the additional custodians, et cetera, is off the table for now. Moving into health then, we do seem to have an uptick in COVID, although I'm not hearing any official numbers out. But I've known of quite a few families that are, the entire family has COVID. I don't know if it's for personal testing, so it's not done through the state. I'm not sure.
17 positive cases, no hospitalizations.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know what was the current status and how we were addressing it, and then perhaps move into health.
Just as an update, I would have received a number of messages from persons stating that there's an uptick in COVID cases within the school. Just as a cautionary tale, number one, okay, that was from me actually. So,
Right, thank you very much. And Paul Sec, if the mic is working, you're up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year to everyone. I'll just be brief with some quick updates. For can anyone help me what was missed? Should I just go? Yeah. I was saying, since it seemed like everything was missed, so should I start from Happy New Year, everyone? But, like I said, the minister indicated that there's been some extra monies in the budget allocated to sports, which is welcome because it's the first time we've had these monies in an increase in the sporting budget for quite a while. And it's timely because we know there are tournaments coming up like the Leeward Islands cricket tournament, which will be held in St. Kitts in March. That's usually a big ticket item in terms of what we have the budget for. So preparations are in place. We've also sent out invitations and Mike sound like me, man. What happened to me? You good? Yeah. So there was a list that was prepared before, but it was very restrictive as to how the drag racers would be able to get this going. So we are now in discussions to see how we can rework this list and make it more beneficial for the drag strip guys. Well, of course, we're going to be going to public consultation because we know with something like a drag strip, it's going to affect some community where it would be located. So once we have the list lined up and ready to go, we will start our public consultations. In terms of the Ministry of Sustainability, Innovation and Environment, we will be coming with a press release, a press conference soon in terms of the Blue Week. So I just encourage you to listen out for that. That will be coming on stream very, very soon. And that is for me an updates. So this is you guys, huh?
You wowed them with science there, Paul Zeg. That's a good way to start out the year. All right. Let's go to the Minister for Home Affairs. He has some things to say. So,
Thank you, Premier, and Happy New Year to all of you at the press today. Happy New Year as well to all of those who are listening via radio and social media. So I'm pleased to announce that the Ministry of Home Affairs, in collaboration with the Minimum Wage Committee, will be launching a series of public consultations beginning next week, Monday and Tuesday, January 23rd and 24th, at the gallery of the Parliament building, beginning each evening at 5:30. Monday's consultation will focus mainly on employees, and Tuesday's consultation mainly on employers. This is your moment to share your concerns, your comments, your thoughts. Speak your mind, so to speak. The ministry and the committee really want to hear from persons what they would like to see in terms of a minimum wage for Anguilla. So the committee is not coming to the consultation to give you information. We want to hear from the workers, from the employers, from the Anguillians. We want to hear what people have to say. And we have set up an email, min wage, that is MINWAGE, minwage@gov.ai, to allow for stakeholders to submit their questions, their comments, and other interactions ahead of Monday and Tuesday, and then as an interface moving forward. So that email would have gone live today, so feel free to feed your questions, your comments, that ahead of Monday and Tuesday, if there are issues that we have to do a little research on and address at those public consultations. So others will follow, but this is a start, and it's an important exercise that we want to see workers come out and share and participate. I'm very pleased with the work of the committee over the past months under the leadership of Dr. Wycliffe Foy, and we look forward to what will happen on Monday and Tuesday. We want to thank the Speaker and the Clerk of the House, Radio Anguilla and Dites, for collaborating with us on this venture. I just want to be very clear this afternoon as well that the provision for minimum wage has been part of legislation starting with the Fair Labor Standards Ordinance of 1988, continuing with the revised Fair Labor Standards Act of 2015, and now the Labor Relations Act of 2018. So the actions of this administration to finally push ahead with minimum wage comes almost 35 years after the fact. It is interesting that when we look at the white paper that was published in May of 2020, and in comments by the then Chief Minister and Minister of Finance, Mr. Victor Banks, Premier Victor Banks, sorry, he said the government of Anguilla, and I quote from the document, has embarked on an economic and fiscal reform program aimed at restoring growth, achieving fiscal sustainability, poverty alleviation, and other critical issues of social development. This program, he continues, although initiated in the aftermath of Hurricane Irma, has acquired added importance and urgency as our economy grapples with the ramifications of global events that have impacted on the local economy, necessitating that there should be fiscal and economic reforms that allow the economy to be able to respond to and recover from shocks such as global and economic recessions, pandemics, natural disasters, etc. I dare say minimum wage is one such reform that is 5 years overdue and counting, and I say that without reservation. So I'm encouraging persons to come out on Monday and Tuesday to the consultations, participate, let your voice be heard, be part of shaping minimum wage legislation and a minimum wage rate for Anguilla in 2023 and moving forward. That is basically what I have to share this afternoon at this time.
Mr. Hodge, my question is outside your presentation. We know that you usually address a number of rumors that usually are out there, and one of the things that has been put out there is that your wife has sought employment at Aurora Hotel, hoping to replace someone under a work permit. What can you tell us about that?
Well, what I can say, my wife has recently retired from the public service, and my wife wishes to extend her services across the sector. She has applied to several places, businesses in Anguilla, seeking employment.
In this particular instance, though, it seemed to kind of infer that you probably would reject renewing that person's work permit in the hopes of having your wife replace this individual.
That's utterly ridiculous. That's utterly ridiculous. We have a very streamlined process for work permit applications that goes through a rigorous process. So I consider that as utter ridiculous. Yeah.
Mr. Hodge?
Yes, sir.
In reference to the amnesty,
Yes.
in reference to the amnesty for last year, how well did it go?
Sorry?
The amnesty for last year, how well did it go?
Oh, that went well. In the House, in the budget debate, I would have reported in terms of immigration, we would have had some 31 persons that would have come forward to regularize their status, and we had, I recall, I think there were like 10 persons under labor. So it went extremely well, and the persons are now paying up their monies that are due to government. And, you know, we want to thank those persons who would have come forward. It's interesting that some of these persons were around here, some of them for 15, 16 years, and never regularized, you know. So it was really good. It was a good exercise.
Com- compared to the number that was on the books, the 31, whatever 30 plus, would you say that the ratio is much higher than those who didn't come in?
That is hard to really quantify in terms of numbers because people come and people go all the time, Lloyd. So it will be really hard to quantify in terms of number. That number changes constantly. But we realized it was an issue for some time that persons' status was not being regulated. And you see, this comes up particularly when persons come in to apply for their permanent residence and their status, naturalization, and belonger. Because when you don't have those records up to date, it raises a red flag. So that's why I encourage persons, do not allow their status to lapse, get it up to date. Yeah.
I have a question. It's not for you, but for in reference to what's happening with the solid waste collection contracts that should have been expiring this month.
As Minister of Health, with that responsibility, I'll answer that. Actually, the solid waste contracts expire December 31st of 2023. That is the ones for collection, the one for the landfill. That was a 5-year contract with the possibility of a 2-year extension, and the 2-year extension was initiated. Certainly, that was not brought to our attention. But the actual collection ones expire December 31 of 23, and they also have the possibility of a 2-year extension. Although I can put it on record right now that we will not, initiate the 2-year extension. We will put it back out for tender close to the time of expiration. And we also are hoping to expand the number of companies that will be able to participate in garbage collection.
That reminds me, is there any progress in the glass recycling program? Or those of us who are putting bottles in the blue bins, are we wasting our time? Or is anything happening with that?
There's no formal recycling program as yet. Those discussions are ongoing, but it doesn't hurt for you to continue so you can develop the habit. Muscle memory is good.
We have the habit, but what happens to the bottles that go in the blue bin? Do they go to a certain place waiting for a recycling program? They just go to the landfill?
As far as I know, yes. So, but again, modern societies do move towards recycling. We've moved to, banning plastics and styrofoams. And, so recycling, as I said, is one of those habits that we want to get into. And certainly how to dispose of those ones that collected is something that we're working on also. Thank you, though. Continue and encourage others to do the same. If there are no other questions for the minister, then I'd like to handle my 3 ministries all in one sitting: health, economic development, and finance. As I said earlier, in health, there are 17 positive cases of COVID. There's none of them are hospitalized. I encourage continue those who are not vaccinated to get vaccinated. And those who have not been boosted to get boosted. Continue to practice hygiene measures as have been stated. COVID is still here, and we need to make every effort to avoid it, or if you do get exposed to it, that you're immune. Also, I want to say the other respiratory diseases that are out there. We have, the flu. And we also have RSV. And so again, practice good hygiene measures, stay in ventilated areas. And if you have symptoms of the cold or flu or COVID, I recommend staying away from work until the symptoms improve, until you get tested. In terms of the MRI machine, it is here. It came in middle of December. We're happy for that. As you would have seen in the newspaper, the Anguillian, that this was paid for by the Richard Schultz Family Foundation. Mr. Schultz is the owner of Aurora. The shipping and storage was paid for by Gary and Connie Sharp, who are villa owners in Anguilla, and Mr. Robert Seamus, who's also a villa owner and who's been coming to Anguilla for a long time. We thank our visitors to our shores who have become part of the community, have built or have bought here, and they are certainly buying into helping to make this community better. And I appreciate they're using their private resources to do that. The health reform, in terms of the current status of the MRI machine, the testing MRIs were done. So persons had MRIs done here while it was being tested with the technicians and the MRI technologist who was here at that time. We are waiting for an MRI tech to come on island to do actual scheduled MRI testing. We have made arrangements for the MRIs to be read by radiologists. And this is an added service that complements access to adequate health care here in Anguilla. Now, with the machine here, the persons will not have to go over to St. Martin or elsewhere to have MRIs done. MRIs are necessary for diagnosis, especially for brain and other soft tissue diseases. The Health Reform Committee has been meeting, and that's the team that is working on transition of the Health Authority back into the Ministry of Health. Those discussions are going very well, and I will have a report as soon as I get a preliminary report, and they're tasked with providing me a preliminary report within the next 2 months, and then a final report and thereafter. In terms of projects, we do have Cove Castles was sold, and there'll be work to progress on Shoal Bay West to bring that back into a fully functional touristic venture, provide jobs, continue the good work that was done there prior to it becoming defunct many years ago. The Savannah Bay project, we are in the final stages of completing the MOU, and then that project should get on stream. Cebu has approached us in terms of renovation and expansion of that project. Four Seasons property was bought by the DOT Group out of the Cayman Islands, and their plan certainly significant developments in that area, as well as the other properties are, as was stated by the minister, there's been good activity there in terms of visitors coming, and the projections are good. And so the properties are coming up to increasing or improving their game so that they can compete. We do have several properties that are ranked very high in the Caribbean, and our beaches are standing out, and our touristic or bars and restaurants are standing up well. Aurora has done the amphitheater and is putting on weekly programs there, and the plan for a water park. So I think there's an expansion of services. That means more jobs for the people of Anguilla, and the Minister for Home Affairs, as you know, has been pushing hard to make sure that qualified Anguillians are the first chosen for these jobs that become available. We also look at financial services, as the Minister for Tourism mentioned. We have budgeted for a marketing person to be in the ATB to do financial services, so that it is a combined program when they go abroad, and they can sell Anguilla's services in tourism and also the financial services, the products that are available. Gaming is also, we're working on the policy and the legislation, and that is happening. And I guess the Minister wanted me to let everyone know that the Island Harbor Pier, which has been pending its repairs for over a year, that the tendering has gone out, the materials are here, and that will be started shortly to get done, so that the fishermen and those pleasure boaters that come to Island Harbor, that they know that they'll have a wharf that works. I see I'm covering for all the ministers now. The Ani Villas is, they are going to have their groundbreaking coming up real shortly they've already cleared the land down in Shoal Bay for the new villa project there, and their social commitment is to build a ICT lab at the Vivian Vanderpool Primary School, and with that the government has also listened to the teachers and principal there and the Parent Teachers Association, and will add 2 new classrooms to that lab, so that they can move the building or not have to use the building that is closest to the sea. I appreciate the applause. Yes, he wants me to reiterate that the pier is the tender is done and it has been awarded, and the Island Harbor Pier will get started. And the Sandy Ground Pier also was completed in September and is up to full use. And I certainly know that you've seen that viral report from Mr. Burgrass, Lloyd Gums, that talks about the burgrass near the public toilet. Other than that, getting back to where we were, the Ministry of Finance, has put out the budget for 2023. Recurrent revenue projected 288 million. Recurrent expenditure 245.9 million. The capital expense of 21 million. So this administration has, using the funding that is available and access to funding to ensure that we can bring projects into play that will help. One of those projects, which is mostly privately funded, is Blowing Point Indoor Stadium, basketball court. We also have food security. Money was appropriated to the Ministry for Sustainability, Innovation and the Environment for food security project, which involves some hydroponics, vertical farming. And so these are projects that will not only engage the ministers, but certainly will engage young people who will be taught different techniques that can then be implemented, so that agriculture, fishing, manufacturing can become part of the jobs that are available, businesses that are possible in Anguilla. And I'll stop there for now and see if you have any questions.
Dr. Webster, you spoke about the financial services industry and the gaming legislation. We know that FSC has suspended the operations of Madroka. We understood that they have notified the government about its suspension. Could you give us an update on this?
Yeah, certainly. I received a letter from Madroka Anguilla Lottery stating that The Financial Service Commission had requested they suspend services until they provided audited financial statements. This is something that is required by regulations, since the AFSC is the regulatory body for the lottery. It's part of compliance, and the letter from the lottery said that the way that their finances were reported was not in keeping with what it was required by the AFSC, and so they would suspend services until they could get their finances in order.
Can you give us an idea of how much money is collected from these lottos? Like we have the Caribbean lotto and we have the...
We have no idea, and that's the reason why these audited financial statements are essential. And certainly we have to give account in terms of anti-money laundering and combating financing of terrorism, and we cannot do that when we don't have access to that information.
Okay, Mayor, do you have a date for the Caribbean Development Bank coming to visit Anguilla? There's been talk that they were coming in March or...
I do have a date. I don't know if it's public, so I'd rather not say, but it will be this month.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Premier, an idea on when the bank will be sold?
And no specific date. Right now, there is a sales committee that has been formed, and the bank is starting a valuation study to determine what is the value of the bank. Once we get that report, and then there will be a prospectus produced, and that will be sent out to interested buyers. I can assure you that there are several interested parties who would like to buy the shares of the National Commercial Bank of Anguilla. And if you've been listening, the bank did make a profit last year, and so I think it's going in the right direction.
You said there are several entities wanting to buy the bank.
Correct.
Will it be open for individuals also to purchase shares in the bank?
And that is right now, the sales committee is having those discussions, and that will certainly have to come to government and the executive committee, because the executive committee is those members make up the shareholders committee of the bank. So that will come for discussion, whether it would be just whether it's open to individuals also. I mean, if there's an individual want to buy the whole bank, that is also possible. But one of the things that I feel is that we should retain a portion of the shares, that if individual Anguillians want to buy again shares in the bank, that they can. So that is certainly one of the discussions we are having, whether we sell the whole 100% or we retain a portion of it for Anguillians to be able to buy in. And I'm leaning more towards that we retain a portion for Anguillians to buy.
When the bank is sold, the shares in Anglic, what will happen to that?
Certainly, if the bank is sold, then the 23% shares that are held in Anglic, that would then be sold with it. Certainly that is an asset of the bank, and it goes with the bank unless government decides to buy it away from them, which has been offered as be just like the bank owns NCDS, and the requirement of it becoming a commercial bank was that it had to sell off NCDS. That hasn't been done yet, but that's one of the conditions, just so the shares in MICO The bank owns a certain amount of those. So those all belong to government. Government, being the 100% shareholder in the bank, now has control of those shares.
Yeah, idea of the sales committee, who's it comprised of?
Can't give that off the top of my head. It's comprised of some of the directors in the bank, and there are persons from the Ministry of Finance, yes, financial advisor, but I couldn't give you the full composition off the top of my head.
To go back to the question I asked as it relates to the lotto, when I asked about monies collected, and you said you have no idea. So I just find it curious that the Caribbean Lotto has been in existence for years, Medjoker and Stream for some time now, so nothing is on the books to show any income or revenue collected for government?
If there is, I'm not familiar with it at this point in time. But I do know that there is concern that we don't have audited financials, specifically from Majorca. In terms of Caribbean Lottery, I haven't seen specific numbers as to what the government has collected in taxes. Yeah, I just wait to see. If there are no other questions regarding, okay, I'll turn over to Minister for a parting word.
Just to extend, the Anguillan people do a tremendous job as it relates to hospitality, and invariably we receive awards and rewards for the hard work that we have done in hospitality. And I will never try to claim credit for any of the rankings that I'm going to have received from all of the travel writers across the world. But I just wanted to send out congratulatory remarks, especially to Anguilla on a whole for becoming best beach, best Caribbean beach, and Shoal Bay Beach. Sunshine Shack for being the number 2 best Caribbean beach bar. Elvis's Beach Bar for being number 3 best Caribbean beach bar. Zeme Beach House for being number 3 best Caribbean resort in 2023 for 2023, Readers 2023, and Aurora Golf Course, which came out as number 3 best golf course for 2023. Be that as it may, it is a belief of many that Aurora Golf Course is perhaps one of the best golf courses in the world. So we're very proud and pleased to see the work that is being done there, and it bodes well for our product.
Thank you. And the Minister also wants a parting word.
Yes, it's been good to be back in operation with the press conferences, but I was just informed, somebody sent me a note indicating that Majorca would have temporarily terminated their contracts with their workers. I can't speak to whether this is true or not, but I would say workers should come to the Labor Department for advice on their rights and privileges under the law. So if this is a fact, then I encourage workers to come to the Labor Department and ask to speak to the Labor Commissioner or the Deputy Labor Commissioner in regards to this issue.
All right, I want to thank everyone for being here today. Certainly a good way to start out 2023, with this robust information sharing. And we'll continue to do that every first and third Monday unless it's a holiday. I want to thank you for being here, the ministers, the parliamentary secretary, ministerial assistant, public relations officer, Dites, and also Radio Anguilla, Lloyd's Live, the Daily Herald, the Anguillian, and KCN Channel 4. Thanks again, and look forward to the next time that we are together. Just wanted to announce that the Minister for the Overseas Territories, Lord Zach Goldsmith, will be visiting Anguilla in early February, along with the Director for the Overseas Territories, Mr. Paul Candler. And as you would know, Her Excellency the Governor announced that she will be moving to the Turks and Caicos Islands in June of 2023. and the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office has assured me that they are seeking her replacement even at this time. Thank you again. Look forward to seeing you next time. Be safe and God bless you all. God bless Anguilla.